Hi, everyone. This is Kylene with Parents for Public Schools of Pitt County. I am excited to be joined today with Jennifer Johnson, a face that's become quite familiar to all of us. She's the Public Information Officer for Pitt County Schools. Thanks for being here with me today, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you for just serving us this summer and really getting the information out to our parents. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So speaking of information to get out to parents, we have some.
We do. We have lots of information.
So, a lot of students chose the virtual option for learning this year. And it sounds like they're going to need to be making some decisions in the coming days. Why don't you tell us what's coming up for virtual families?
Sure. So we know our virtual families are wondering about they need to commit for next year. So if we have a family who's virtual right now and they want to stay virtual, then they can stay as a virtual learner, of course, during the pandemic. That is an option that the state has given all families to make sure that each individual situation is certainly honored. And we certainly, as a school system, do provide robust and great education that's comparable to the classroom as much as we possibly can. So that definitely is an option. We have some face-to-face families too that have that option if they ever decide to choose virtual, etc. But we are starting to look to next semester. So our families at the beginning of the summer, or at the end of the summer, beginning of the semester, really had to make a choice to do virtual learning or face-to-face. Situations were different at that time. Numbers were different at that time, lots of things. We didn't know what school was going to look like at that time, but we did promise families that they could really decide what their family wanted to do at the end of the semester. So it's actually time to do that. So it's time for families to really think about where they want to be for the spring semester. That starts in January and goes through June. And so we're starting to open up a window of time for families that are virtual right now. Now, if a family is face-to-face right now, then they're going to stay. We're going to assume that they're staying face-to-face. Just know that those families can move to virtual at any time if they want to. But if a family is virtual right now, then we need for them to commit to really telling us, are you going to stay virtual? Is that your choice for the rest of the year? Or would you like to move to face-to-face? We're giving them that choice to say, hey, I think I'm ready to come back to face-to-face. I've watched and I think that we're ready. We need to come and try face-to-face. And so we're offering that for the next 2 weeks, starting on Monday. Through November 20th, schools will connect with our virtual families and really get that commitment from them.
Okay, so parents who are making that decision and they're currently virtual and maybe they're thinking about what they want to do next semester. Now, I heard you say something at the end about schools reaching out. Should families call the school and tell them what they want, or should they wait for the school to contact them?
That is a great question. We would ask that families wait for the school. We've given a 2-week window, which is plenty of time. Schools are preparing surveys right now, or preparing their teams to make phone calls. And they're really working on that through the end of this week. And so we would ask that parents just be patient. We know that you want to tell us. We want to know what your decision is. So we thank you for being eager, but we also would ask that you would honor that for the schools and wait until Monday. Wait for your schools to contact them. And then if you don't hear from our schools, then of course you can, after Monday, connect and contact. But just be patient. We do have a full 2-week window open where parents can make those decisions and let us know.
Okay. And I think I heard you say something about November 20th. Is that sort of the deadline of when families really need to make a decision?
That is correct. So November 20th is the deadline. Again, we have 2 weeks to really think about and make that decision and commit that decision and connect with our schools and let them know. But November 20th really is the cutoff date for committing for the spring. Some families might go, why? Why do I have to really decide by November 20th? That is a great question. And I can see how families would really wonder about that. But from the Pitt County Schools perspective, there are so many logistics that go with just really educating in a pandemic. And so November 20th is the cutoff date. After that date, your commitment is firm and it is a final and binding decision. And we need that time. Really, if you think about it, it's only 2 or 3 weeks until the December 18th, which is the last of the semester for our students. And so we really need that time to plan for buses. We need time to plan for meals. We need time to plan for just our classroom spacing, scheduling. There are tons of logistics that we have to think about and plan, and that just gives us a few week turnaround time to be able to do that and do that well. We really want to make sure that the transition is as smooth as possible, and so we need that time and ask that families give us that time to do so.
Okay. And so if a family did not let you know their decision by November 20th and they are currently virtual, you would assume that they are staying virtual
That is
for
correct.
next semester.
That is correct. And our schools are going to reach out to each of our virtual families, but if for some reason we don't connect with them, then we are going to assume the decision that you made at the beginning of the year will hold for virtual learning for the rest of the year.
Now, if a family decides that they're going to do virtual, but let's say in March they realize that's not working very well and they'd really like to switch to face-to-face, is that going to be an option, or is this a commitment they're making from January to June?
Actually, for virtual families, it is a commitment that you are making. We need to say that up front and make sure that we're letting families know that just like in the fall semester, that is a binding decision. If you choose virtual learning, then you must stay virtual learning. So the commitment is from January all the way through June of 2020.
Okay. But on the flip side, if a family is face-to-face, they can still go virtual at any point. Is that correct?
That is correct. So if families want to start out face-to-face and really see how their child does, then absolutely they can choose face-to-face, but at any time, a family can choose to go with virtual learning. Absolutely.
Okay. So I know that one factor in families making a decision about returning to school is transportation. So can you let us know a little bit about what the buses look like? You know, how many students can be on a bus or how many per seat? Certainly virtual families may not have been thinking about that yet because it wasn't a need yet. But if they're going to go face to face, it might be something they want to think about more.
Right. Absolutely. And many times we've repeated this many times and let families know that we are under North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services guidelines, and they spell out guidelines for our classrooms, and they spell out very specific guidelines for our buses as well. And so the guidelines for our buses now stand at one person per seat, unless there are a sibling or a family group that lives together. And so to meet that guideline of one family or one person or one family group per seat, we really have to hold to those guidelines. So that's one reason we need to know what the commitment is before November 20th, because we will be looking at our buses, shifting our buses, making sure we plan for those bus routes, and then communicating those bus routes to our families in a timely manner.
And then also thinking about numbers. Some families might want to know about how many students might be in each class, and what does spacing look like in the classroom if more students are going back face to face and things like that. What can you tell us about that?
That's a great question. And that's probably one of the most complicated things that, so we want to make sure that we explain to families. So we're actually operating under two different systems right now in Pitt County Schools. So we'll start with Plan B. All of our students are in middle school and high school are operating under Plan B guidelines. And so if we're talking right now to middle school and high school families, then you can expect your students to come back, and there is a 6 feet requirement in the classroom to be maintained at all times. And so, and in the hallways, et cetera, we have markings for the hallways. We have stickers on the floor. We've got lots of signage, et cetera. And so we are required to keep 6 feet within the classroom for those guidelines for middle and high school students. And those are Plan B guidelines. And again, that is given to us by the governor's executive orders. That middle school and high school is still under Plan B guidelines. However, our K through 5 students are now under Plan A guidelines and have been since we're allowed to be October 5th. For Pitt County Schools, that was October 20th. And so our K through 5 students are under Plan A guidelines. And what that means specifically is that there is not a requirement for 6 feet of distance. And so that's the guideline that we're under. But what we're operating under with Pitt County Schools is we are wanting our classrooms to be absolutely as safe as possible, while at the same time making sure that we are offering that face-to-face learning to as many students as possible as we can as we can arrange. And so for a classroom size, If we're speaking about Plan A, we do not or are not required to have 6 feet of distance. We are trying to keep students at least 1 meter apart from others in the classroom. And our classroom sizes vary. We have some very large classrooms, and we have some very small classrooms, et cetera. And so what we've done is we have our facilities department that is available to all teachers, all principals. They go out, they maximize the space, we remove any furniture or anything extra that doesn't need to be there so that we can maximize that space to make sure that those classrooms are as safe as possible for students. And so our teachers and our principals have taken us up on that and have really been in there with measuring sticks, et cetera, and are really concerned with making sure those babies, those students are able to go face to face and get that face to face learning. We know that face to face learning is the best and most optimal learning conditions for students. And so we want to make sure that if students do go back to school, that they are in as safe environment as possible.
Okay. So thank you to our facility staff, and thank you to teachers and that teamwork that has to happen right now, as teachers really rely on facility staff to come and just help them move their classrooms around and help them brainstorm the best spaces possible. And there's so many details going into this. So lots of thanks to those folks.
I do have to say that our facilities department are a lot of unsung heroes. They really
absolutely
work behind the scenes. Logistics that our facilities department has had to face and had to really we talk about teamwork. That is a solid team, and it's a team that's behind our teachers and our educators and really serving our students and our families behind the scenes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much to all those facilities folks. So we're talking right now about classrooms and number of kids in classrooms. And so I would assume that could change a little bit, as you have new students come in and numbers change. Is it possible that in order to keep the safest distancing, that students will be moved a bit and teachers may change? So a student might have a different teacher in January than when they leave in December.
That is a great question. And so again, we promised our parents to give them another option after the semester. So if we have a virtual family that's like, I'm dying to get back to face to face, I really want to get back in that classroom, my student really needs that. And I've seen that the school system is handling COVID and the pandemic. And so I feel safe enough to return my student that they can do that. And so really I'm sorry, repeat your question one more time.
That's okay. Is it possible that students could change teachers because classroom numbers may change? And so is it possible that a student might have one teacher in December and they have to switch teachers in January?
And so for those families that are excited to come back, we are unsure how many families we've heard here and there, et cetera. So that's why we're given that 2-week window. But once we know those numbers, then we have to then go back and really look at it. So it really depends on what we find out after November 20th, how many of those families are coming back, how many of those are we dealing with now, how many more students per school, per grade level, et cetera. And then once we have those numbers, which is another reason why it takes a little while for us to plan the logistics, we look at our classroom spaces, we look at our grade levels, and and really some schools are different from others. Some schools may have a lot more virtual learners coming back and some may not. And so it may change. That is a very good possibility for some schools that already have some spacing issues. If there are virtual learners that are coming back, we may have to change classrooms. We may have to change buses. We may have to change schedules. We don't want to do that at all. We really we understand that the pandemic is hard enough and we want to keep consistency as much as possible. But safety is also our top priority. And so we are going to have to shuffle. We are going to have to schedule differently if we need to. In some other schools, it may not be an issue. We may have many virtual families saying, I'm going to stay virtual. That's what I am. And it's a very small shift, but it is a possibility. Parents do need to know that their schedules could change, buses could change, and teachers could change for students.
Okay. And while we stay on the topic of number of students in a classroom and how this might change and ebb and flow, is it possible that COVID protocols could change when we have more students in the classroom?
Good question. Actually, protocols won't change at all. We are under the same exact protocols that we have been under since August. And again, kudos to our facilities department for really making sure that there's plenty of hand sanitizer, plenty of wipes, plenty of really our staff members coming around and making sure that doorknobs and other things and high touch services are cleaned and disinfected. Our staff members clean and disinfect in between classrooms. Or in between class changes, if that's the case. In some cases it's not, but in middle and in high school, there's some class changing, some encore, et cetera. And so the guidelines aren't going to change because they're very good and strict guidelines. Are we going to make sure that we are paying attention to those? Absolutely. We have been doing such a great job. Our teachers have been doing such a great job. We've hired extra staff to really clean in the evenings. And so we just want to keep doing what we're doing. But certainly if there are more students in a classroom, that just means there's more surfaces that we need to clean, et cetera. And so we're just going to be vigilant as we have been since August. Absolutely.
Okay. Now, I will say at Parents for Public Schools, there are a couple of really popular questions lately that parents are just asking either on our Facebook page, or I've had some phone calls. So one of those is, are Mondays going to remain virtual, or are they ending?
Isn't that the question? We've heard that question too, and we are asking that question, and we are discussing that in complete authenticity. We understand that that is a question that everyone wants to know. What I can tell you right now, where we are right now, is that virtual Mondays do extend through November 16th. And so, and right now there has not been a change for that to continue. However, we are discussing, we spoke with our principals earlier this week about virtual Mondays, how they were being used, what that looked like, how they were serving virtual families on Mondays, how they were able to use that time to really maximize connecting with families. We just met with our teacher advisory council this week, and we're asking them about virtual Mondays and what that looks like and how they're connecting with parents. And so we're looking at those things and making sure that we are taking that data, taking that information, and really deciding well about virtual Mondays. And so it's on the table. Absolutely. It's on the table to whether we are going to continue virtual Mondays or not. But we do not have a final decision for you. I'm sorry to say, but I have to be very authentic and say, yes, we are discussing whether we need to continue with virtual Mondays through the end of the semester, through the end of the year. We're just not sure. But the first thing is really looking at virtual Mondays and seeing how they impact our staff, our students, and our parents.
Right. I want to clarify for folks who might be watching this video 3 weeks from now that this is being recorded on Friday, November 6th. And so as of Friday, November 6th, virtual Mondays are going through November 16th. And of course, if any changes happen with that, Pitt County Schools would of course inform you, and Parents for Public Schools will be happy to share any information that they have. But as of November 6th, we are set for virtual Mondays through November 16th.
And that really will be a board decision as well. So we're gathering all of that information and we are presenting to the board, and they will ultimately make their decision based on our recommendations.
Thank you for sharing what you know about that right now. And then the other question that seems to be a popular one right now is middle school and high school. Any chance they're going to go back face-to-face, every week instead of every other week anytime soon?
Right. I love our parents because they have the same exact questions that we have. So we're asking the same questions. And what that means is we don't have that answer at all, because that is something that is really provided to us by our governor and executive orders. And so again, just as we talked about in the very beginning of this video, Plan A is our where our elementary students K through 5 are allowed to be according to state guidelines and state law. And Plan B is where our middle school and high school is supposed to be right now, according to state law and governor's orders. And so we don't have the power to change that at all. And so we we can't change that, and we don't know when it's going to change. We wonder ourselves if that trend, that elementary students were going back to school, does that just mean middle school and high school we're going to follow suit? We haven't been told that. We don't have any inside information. And honestly, I think our leaders are looking at data, really talking about it, but they're also very tight-lipped and looking at research, et cetera. And so as soon as we know something, we promise we will let families know. But for right now, our middle school and high school students are under Plan B, and our kindergarten through fifth grade students are operating under Plan A. Don't know any time that would change.
Okay, excellent. Well, I believe that is all the questions that we have for now. So thank you so much for sharing this information. Families, if you are currently virtual, just keep in mind to be expecting some sort of communication from your school over the next couple of weeks so you can make a decision that's best for your family about if you want to return to face-to-face next semester or remain virtual. That's really, I think, the main point of our video today is to be expecting that communication. You won't need to reach out to your school. They'll be reaching out to you within the next couple of weeks. Any last minute details you want to add, Jennifer?
Yes, I was going to say that parents can make sure that they have our district newsletter. That's something we've started from the pandemic. We have a newsletter that goes out about every 2 weeks. It isn't a regular schedule because we want to make sure that parents know that the information that we're sending out is critical and it's right now, and then they need to know the information. So it's been averaging about 2 weeks that we send things out. So make sure you have an email that's on record that is valid. Make sure you have your phone number that's on record at your school level. That's a valid phone number, so we can reach you. We send out a phone call, and Kylene, you can attest to this. You get a phone call and you get an email and you get a text and you get the app reminder as well. So we really have tried to make sure that communication is authentic. We tell you what we know when we know it, and we give you many different avenues. So we've done videos. We have an FAQ about this very topic that was sent out to our parents earlier, actually yesterday, last night, so November 5th. And so that should be in inboxes. We have a website just for COVID related district updates. We have an entire FAQ site that actually is from parent questions that we've collected along the way. So we really want to communicate with parents and communicate, like we said, what we know and when we know it. And then when we will know if there is something that's coming down the pipe. So make sure that you're following us on our social media. Make sure you're following and answering those phone calls. And then just making sure that you have all of your information up to date so that we can keep in contact with you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Families, thank you for joining us today. And I will say, in this season of thanks, consider writing some thank you notes or having your kids write thank you notes to some of those behind the scenes heroes. Of course, their teachers and their principals, but the custodian at your school would love a thank you note. Those cafeteria workers, you know, all of these folks, even folks like Jennifer Johnson here, who we hear her voice so very often on our phones, giving us the best information possible. Families, this is a great time to reach out and just say thank you to all the different folks who are in the schools, working so hard to keep all of these details organized and make sure that our kids have the best experience possible this school year. So thank you again for joining us, and thanks for taking this time with us today.
Absolutely. And we are grateful for you, grateful for our Parents for Public Schools partner that has done many of these sessions. We appreciate it, getting the information out. We appreciate our parents. We appreciate our students. We know that has been difficult, but we are dedicated to making sure that we do the number one thing that we are assigned to do, and that is to educate your students as best as possible and as safely as possible. So thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.